Welcome to the Disruptors Network podcast.
Welcome back to the Disruptors Network podcast. We have an amazing guest for you today with Heather Monahan. She's a former C-suite executive who was named one of the most influential women in radio in 2017. After that, she wrote a best-selling book on Amazon, started a podcast, was a TedX speaker, and is empowering women with her story all over the world. She has a new book out called Overcoming Your Villains, and I want to talk to how she's grown over the last few years and what's next. So without further ado, Heather Monahan.
Ignition. Liftoff.
Welcome back to the Disruptors Network, and we have Heather Monahan, who I just spoke about in the intro. And Heather, I'm really, really happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming. I know you're busy, and I know you're kind of all over the world, and we'll get to that a little bit. But I actually read your book in the last 2 weeks. I read Confidence Creator. I haven't gotten to the new one yet, which is Overcoming Your Villains.
You can see it right here.
Yes, there you go. I wrote it down, but Confidence Creator was great. It really resonated with me because I came up in a sales environment, obviously. So a lot of your story it was resonating with me. And what I thought was most impressive about me, and I'm sure you get into the next book, so I'm going to ask about that, is that you really restarted your career after 40. So can you just talk a little bit about your background and how it was like starting over again? And you had a kind of big moment that shook everything up. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I had a really successful career in corporate America. I came up through sales, and as you know, sales is applicable to everything you do. So it was a great foundation for me in business. And I got into the media business at a very young age. I became an equity partner in my early 20s and netted my partners $30 million on a property that I drove revenues on that we escalated and sold in under 3 years. And that kind of put my name on the map. I went to a publicly traded company and I became a VP of sales and then an EVP and then a chief revenue officer. And then I was named one of the most influential women in radio in 2017. And a couple of weeks later, I was fired. I was shocked. I had never been anything but promoted and awarded, and I'm a super overachiever. So that was kind of shocking. And it really was shocking because I had worked for the same CEO for 14 years. He became ill and he elevated his daughter to replace him, which a lot of people don't talk about, in the workplace. But, she had been a real bully to me at work, and she'd always been the CFO when I was a CRO. So I just didn't deal with her much. But in the end, when she became my boss, she fired me immediately. So at 43, I got the opportunity to start over. I had signed a non-compete, and I basically was blocked from the industry I had 20 plus years expertise in and network in. So I said, okay, I have to go somewhere outside of what my expert status is in. I have to start over as a rookie somewhere. Where do I want to go? And I just thought, if I'm ever going to do it, now's the time to go to work for myself.
So, what's amazing about your story, and I watched your TED Talks and I've seen some other stuff you've done, but in your book, and I want to give you a lot of credit for this, you didn't really get into the details of that. Like you kept it very, I'd like to say, politically correct, where you kind of didn't throw her under the bus.
That's because I was so scared back then. I was certain that she was going to sue me because they were so litigious, right? I had worked there for 14 years. They sued plenty of people, and they had shut my phone off. They reported my phone stolen to Verizon a day after I was fired, which is ridiculous. They were just trying to screw with me. However, it worked when you're really crushed like that and you hear that you've stolen a phone. So once I saw that happen, I thought, I don't want to go down this road. So I said, I'm going to put a toe in the water. And so that's where the book came from. It was like, I put a toe in. And then as I started promoting the book, I talked a little bit more. And then I got the courage to do my TED Talk. And then that was like putting 2 feet in the water. And then my new book is really going to blow it all up.
Gets into it. That's because when I heard your TED Talk, you kind of went deeper into it. I'm like, oh, wow, she was really nice the first time around because there was a lot more behind it than you kind of let on. And did you choose to move away from the industry you had been so successful in because, maybe you had the foresight to see that it was changing in a way you didn't want it to be changing, or were you just ready for something new?
No, I had a non-compete. So the contract I signed when I became the chief revenue officer essentially said that if you leave this company for any reason, right, including termination, which I was never going to be fired, I thought that's fine, you cannot compete against us for a year and a half. So I had to leave the media industry for at least a year and a half.
Got it. And then your life changed, obviously. You know, I say to people all the time, we tend not to make decisions to get uncomfortable or to change our lives or anything drastic unless our backs are against the wall. So we don't ever usually force our backs against the wall, but something usually happens and it forces. So that kind of is what happened to you. You're like, I got no choice. I got to go do something else. So what was that restart like for you? Like completely something brand new. Like I have to go out in the world to make money again.
It was awful. Not making money. I have no problem making money. It was awful going from being an expert at the highest level and having a massive network of contacts in my business to starting over with zero, having zero experience and going from the top of your game to going to being a beginner. That was so hard mentally, physically, from a network standpoint to understand what I should do. All of it was trial and error. And it's hard.
Yeah. You know, I really, your story really resonates with me a lot, and for different reasons, for a couple of different reasons. But I've been in mortgages since 2001, so I went through the crash, obviously. So same thing. I was a senior level executive at a publicly traded company, and the world came to an end, and I was on the street and starting over, and I was trying to go to interviews like I was still the senior vice president at this company, and everybody was like, "Yeah, that's not you anymore, buddy. You're lucky if you're a salesperson at this point now." So I had to start over. But so when you said that, it really like resonated with me. That I know what it feels like to be like, all right, what? And like, what were those moments like? The weeks, the months, the year after that, like getting up every single day to kind of do this something new. Like, was it hard? Did you lay in bed for a month? Did you like sit in the dark for a week? Did you just go right at it? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, I'm big into action. That's my new book's all about beliefs, actions, and knowledge, and the combination of those three things empower you to overcome any adversity. But for me personally, the action part is what comes natural to me. Anytime that I'm confronted with a situation, I take massive action. That was back in corporate America. Here now, you know, with books, with speaking, whatever. And so the one thing I did was when I got fired, I realized no one was calling me. Again, I had a new phone number, so people didn't have the number. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to post that I just got fired. So the number one thing I did was be really vulnerable and honest. And I posted, I've just been fired. If I've ever helped you in any way, I need to hear from you now. And that post went viral. And Froggy from the Elvis Duran show saw it. And he tweeted at me, "Hey, if there's any way I can help, just let me know." And one of the things I know in business is if someone extends an opportunity to you, capitalize in the moment, convert in the now. So I tweeted right back at him, "Yeah, get me on the show." I had no idea what I wanted to talk about on the show, but I just knew I've got to get out of this media bubble I'm in. I can't keep working here, right? I'm blocked. So I need to alert people outside of media that I'm an available talent that's worthwhile to have a conversation with. So I thought if I can get on the Elvis Duran show, I can access 10 million people. Maybe one of them will have an idea. So I went on the Elvis Duran show, and halfway through the interview, he said to me, "Well, obviously you're writing a book." And I said, "Well, obviously," but I wasn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't writing a book, you know, but in that moment, and for everyone listening, I want them to know you can literally change the trajectory of another person's life by believing in them. And in that moment, Elvis Duran believed in me, and I took it. I chose to take his belief and pack it into my heart and get on a plane and do something about it. I Googled, how do you write a book? And I was disciplined, and I sat every day and wrote, not knowing if I could even be an author, right? I was a sales leader in media. I was not an author. And I ended up self-publishing my first book, Confidence Creator, which trumped Donald Trump the first week it came out for #1 on the business biography list on Amazon.
That's amazing. It's a very, very good book. It's a very easy read for anybody that's out there that wants to start reading how to write. I think I finished the audiobook in like a week, so less than a week. So I got through it really, really quick. So
oh my gosh, I'm doing my audiobook. Yesterday I did 8 hours, and tomorrow I'm doing 8 hours on my new audiobook.
That's just, I need it. I can't sit and read. I need audio, so I'm happy to hear that that's coming next, because I'll definitely buy it. You know, in your first book, you talk a little bit, I'm sure in your new book too, a lot about insecurities, right? And like how you overcame it and how you get around it. But, you know, I know from experience, and I'm sure you do too, insecurities just don't go away forever. It's not like you defeated and they're gone, right? They come back over and over again. So how are you consistently working on that? Or, when they really ugly ahead, like, how do you stop it again? Or just, like, how do you work on that?
Here's the thing that I would say. I don't agree with the comment you just made. Insecurities don't always come back if you stay in the same familiar place. And I did that for a long time, right? So when I was in corporate America, I stayed in the same job. I didn't push myself to go bigger. I didn't push myself to take risks. Now that I've left corporate America, every day I step into my insecurity. Every day I step into my fear. I don't know what, I'm a second time audiobook person, right? I'm still a rookie. This is only 2 times. So I'm stepping into fear every time I show up. So that's why so many people don't grow. That's why so many people don't reach their potential or chase their passions, because they're afraid to enter into that insecurity zone. What I want people to know is, for a decade, I wouldn't go into the insecurity zone. I stayed in the familiar zone. I don't even want to call it comfort, because it was not comfortable, but it was familiar. And here's what I want you to know. I've grown more in the past couple of years than I did in the last decade and a half when I was staying in that familiar zone. And what's sad is I think to myself, wow, Heather, imagine if you had been stepping into fear and insecurity back then, how much further along, bigger, how much more you'd have accomplished and impacted the world in a positive way. And right now we live in a world where we need positive people. We need people to step into their fear. We need people to move and grow, to move this world forward. And I challenge everyone, get out of familiar, step into insecurity, and see fear as a green light that means go.
Yeah, that's great. I think you're right. I think tackling your insecurities and overcoming, being comfortable all the time, I think that's a death sentence. And I go through this. So I have a lot of women that work for me, and a lot of them are in the business, and I constantly am having these conversations because, mortgages is still a very male-dominated business. It always has been, and it's still very much male-dominated. And the question they always give to me, so I'm going to pose it to you, and I have my own responses, but I'd like to hear yours, is, how do I get past that? Like, how do I deflect them off the path of them either hitting on me or talking to me for the wrong reasons, and how do I keep them on the path of I'm talking to you for business purposes. And I know as a salesperson, how did you get around that and get people back focused on business when you needed them to be, instead of just saying, I quit, I'm not going to deal with this person, I'm not going to work with this person because they're talking to me the wrong way? Was there a technique you used to get the people back on the path of, this is business and I need you to treat me that way?
Yeah, I have a few different things I want to speak to on this. So I come from a heavily male-dominated industry. I mean, ridiculously so, probably much like the mortgage business. And there's one thing that I want to say, which is, at the end of my career and now, people aren't speaking to me poorly because I walk in with such a presence and such confidence. People are intimidated. If anything, they wouldn't say, oh, beautiful dress or whatever, because they're a little intimidated by me. So much has to do with how you carry yourself. And to that woman, if a woman had that question for me, I would say, how are you showing up? We teach people how to treat us, Ralph, right? So we're teaching them how to treat us. Now, I say that having been a 22-year-old who was sexually harassed, a 27-year-old sexually harassed, a 30-year-old sexually harassed. I was showing up differently back then. I giggle and kind of brush it off if someone said something, ha ha ha. Anyways, back to work. And, I was saying, my actions were saying, I'm not giving you clear direction if this is okay or not. Conversely, today I show up, it's crystal clear. So I would say to someone, channel that person that, let's say the guy's name is John. John keeps hitting on you, but I bet John doesn't hit on somebody in the industry. Who is that person? How does that person walk? How does that person talk? What does that person say differently to John that you don't? And start commanding a presence. Now that's one way to handle it. Another way, when I was younger and I didn't have the confidence or the bravado when I would walk into meetings, I was insecure at work. And what I would do that worked for me is I had a boss, I'm sure like how you are, someone I trusted who was good to me, who supported me. And we made a deal. I'd say to him, I'll go into situations not knowing. If I get really uncomfortable and feel like, if I'm not in a good spot, I'm going to let that client know I'm not coming back again. Do you support me on firing those clients that are villains? And he did. And so anytime that I would get in a situation where someone was inappropriate and I just felt like I can't laugh this off, I have to leave, I would fire the client because we would always know, listen, in any industry, you're not anywhere coming close to tapping out the potential clients out in the marketplace. In the radio business, we used to reach 8% of potential advertisers. So don't give me the response that, oh, I lost that client because they were a dirtbag and I can't replace them. Of course you can replace them. You just need to hustle and make more calls, right? Be more savvy. So that was kind of my strategy at a younger age, was I'll fire the dirtbags and I'll go find new clients to replace them. And then it was a recipe for success that worked for us.
Yeah, I love that answer. And my response to them always is that you have to set boundaries immediately. So, if they're trying to take you to coffee or lunch for the first meeting, say, hey, I always have the first meeting in the office, or I always have a first meeting over Zoom. And at that point, if they're just hesitant to deal with you, or they're being evasive and then just fire them. There's plenty of clients out there. You always should be in control. So I think that's a great answer. So thank you for that. What about your transition now, right? Your transition to now we're named one of the top keynote speakers in 2020, and you're on stages and you're at TedX. Did some of your sales background help you on stage, or was that completely a new process for you?
Oh my God, sales had helped me in writing a book. Sales helped me with my speaking career. Sales has helped me being on the board of directors for Healthlynked. Sales is a transferable skill that touches every single industry. And I had never thought of it that way when I was in a sales leadership position. But when I wrote my first book, Confidence Creator, which you brought up, I Googled, how do you sell books? And it said, speak. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've been speaking for 20 years in corporate America. As a sales leader, you command a team, you lead sales meetings every single day, right? You're in front, giving presentations in front of clients. All you're doing is speaking. And so what I realized is I had fine-tuned through practice and discipline my presentation skills, which is essentially speaking skills. So I was able to channel that having 20 years experience. Now, I will say, transitioning into becoming a professional paid speaker, they still didn't care that I had 20 years experience. You had to build up that brand and that name in this new business, right? And that took time, and that was frustrating. And it took a couple of years before I got the top 40 keynote speakers. So all these things also take time. You have to be patient, but you want to access and leverage those skill sets and attributes that you've developed and abilities that you've honed in on over those past decades, and find ways to apply them to the new things that you do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I agree with you. I think that sales is everything. I think sales is everything you do. You're either being sold or you're selling, right? So it's about everything. So, based on that question, would you change if you were to speak to you at 22 and 23 or 27 or 30, would you have given yourself advice to get away from corporate America, to go a different direction? Yeah. Yes.
Oh my gosh, yes. You know what's so frustrating? And again, we can't go back, right? But if for anyone younger that's out there, listen, lead now if you think you can. I never thought about being an entrepreneur. I always thought of just being a CEO of a publicly traded company that I would have been, it was the next step after CRO. To me, it was very logical. However, what I realize now that I didn't realize then, I thought I was in this well-lit environment where everything was very predictable. As long as I kept overperforming, I would get the next job, I would get the next opportunity. I was in a situation where I had zero control. Our CEO became sick. I got a new boss overnight and I was fired because she didn't like me, right? So when you're in corporate America, you have zero control over the industry, the innovation, the technology disruption, the pay cuts, the employee cutbacks. You have zero control over all of it. So if you are someone who is an overachiever, my advice to you and my advice to the young me would have been, get the hell out now. Now that I'm in this speaking business, I see people who went from being a stay-at-home mom in their 20s to getting into the speaking business in their late 20s, no business acumen, no business expertise, but they were strong natural speakers. And now they're making millions of dollars in a business I just got into in the last 2 years, and I'm years behind them trying to catch up, right? Had I done that years ago, I could be outpacing all these people now.
Yeah. So that's a really good answer. And I agree. I think that if you're in a job where there's a ceiling or there's limitations based off the industry you're in or whatever it is, I think that it's always time to make a move. Like if I ever felt limited at all at this point in my life, it would be easy for me I was like, I had to switch. But back then I didn't have the confidence. And I want to give you a compliment and something I've noticed, even listening to your book, because I listened to your voice, right? Because it was an audiobook, and your voice now. I think that you've grown in confidence and strength of your message, and that's maybe 3 years over the last 3 years. So do you feel like you now to you then is a completely different person in a lot of ways?
I don't think a completely different person. No, I'm still fundamentally the same human. However, I agree with you that now it's not my first audiobook, it's my second. And it may only be my second, but that still means I've done it before. So I'm going to enter in more confidently. My podcast has been out for 2 years now. So twice a week, I record episodes live, right? So I'm doing hundreds of keynote speeches. All of these things are a new discipline, a new practice, and honing in on a very specific talent that I didn't used to intentionally think about. So yes, you get stronger, and yes, it comes through. And the same person that producer that produced my first audiobook is doing my new one now. And he said that same thing you just said to me. He said, Heather, it's almost as if your voice sounds stronger now. Do you recognize that? And I said, I actually do. And I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, your message, it was good then, but I think your message is even better now because you're so confident. I don't even want to say confident. You're so comfortable in your message. And what you said to me, I like this interview a lot now because what you said to me is that I was kind of dipping my toes in the water on that book because I couldn't say anything. And now that you said it, it made the book crystal clear to me. I understand your message a lot better. You were kind of holding back and you couldn't say everything. So
wait, you want to know what's so crazy? And it really, in my mind, this kind of articulates what you're saying and what I'm trying to say too. My first book has a black cover, completely black, right? My new book has a completely white cover. And I didn't really think about this until I saw the juxtapose of the two next to each other the other day. And I thought, I have come so far because really my first book, even though it's a great book, amazing reviews, I agree with you, I love it, I'm proud of it, I still was kind of hiding in the dark a little bit. I wasn't fully my full self yet. My new book is really in the light. Listen, I am all in now, and it has not been an easy journey from there to here, and there's value in both, but it's about the growth of a human being and the growth that we all go through.
Yeah, and you said a couple of things in your book that really stuck with me because I do the same things, unfortunately, over and over again. And one of the things you said was, don't say sorry all the time. You were so, and I do it a lot. And it's funny because I thought about you this morning. I was in I was getting a shake this morning at the store over there, and instead of saying excuse me, I said sorry. There was no reason for me to say sorry, but when I said it, I thought of what you said in the book. Just little things like that. Have you stopped doing some of those things a little bit more that were you felt were problems before that you spoke about in your book?
Yeah, I haven't apologized since I wrote that book. I literally don't. I mean, listen, if I accidentally tripped someone, of course I would apologize, but stuff like that doesn't really happen often, right? So no, I don't ever apologize. And I think that is a strength move. However, I still go back to a place of fear. I'm constantly pushing myself and pushing my limits and pushing myself out of my comfort zone. So truly on the daily, I'm stepping into fear. And every time I do, some level of insecurity comes back in again. So I have to go back and, you teach what you need to learn. So I'm constantly teaching how to step into fear because I have to remind myself, Heather, go through the motions. All right, acknowledge that this is fear. It's not real. You can step into it. You've done other big things. You can do this too. And so I'm still on that wheel. I continually go round and round on that one.
What are you working on now or on next that is scary to you? That you're gonna have to get uncomfortable and deal with some insecurities.
My gosh, this is. I reveal something, a personal thing in this book I've never spoken about publicly ever, and it's the scariest thing for me that I've had to do. And I read the chapter yesterday. I'm really close with my producer. He and I worked together in the radio business for years, so I was in a safe space, which was great. But after I did it, I was getting anxious on the drive home, and I'm like, why am I getting anxious? Because I forget, oh, hang on. In a couple of months, this is going to be out for the world to see. Haters are going to come for me. It's going to piss people off. I'm going to have to deal with all that stress and that unknown again. And it's really scary. You work super hard for something, and then you work super hard to market it and sell it to get it out there. And then you hide waiting for, oh my gosh, this is going to be really hard to hear the feedback.
Yeah, I understand. And I don't know if it's, I'm I'm around the same age as you and same experience level and that stuff. I've been in the business and I'm very comfortable with telling my story at this point now. Like I'm very transparent. I don't have a problem talking about, I almost like talking about the things I failed at and the things that were problems to me and stuff like that. I don't know if it's something that comes with being comfortable with yourself or experience, but I'm kind of in a phase that you're at now, but still you're right. Some things I put out there and I'm just like, oh, here, now I have to deal with the negativity that comes from this. And that could be annoying too. And to that point, how do you not stop yourself from doing the things like, oh, I'm going to get 50 negative comments on social media about this, or I'm going to get this or that? Like, how do you push through that stuff?
This is funny. I've been working on that a lot lately. And one of the things that I realize is I can't predict the future. I don't know that I'm going to get 50 negative comments, right?
That's
so
true.
I can't sit here and forecast that. If I could, I'd be running Vegas and forecasting, every bet, and I would never have to work again a day in my life. So I know that's not real. I'm making that up in my head. And an example of this happening this summer, my son had to go to academic camp in New Hampshire. And 2 weeks in, I get a call. He's in the ER. The hand that he uses for everything is broken. His arm's broken. And my mind went right to, I've got to get on a flight. I've got to get him out of there. He's never going to make it. This is horrible. What a waste for him to go there. And by the time I got there a couple of days later, I flew to New Hampshire to get him. He said, Mom, I'm staying. And I taught myself how to write with my other hand. And I've made friends here and I can do hard things. And I about fell over. I never anticipated that. So now I use that story as further proof for me that I can't sit here and forecast that I'm going to get 50 bad reviews on my book. I was wrong last time when my kid broke his arm, right? Yeah. I can't sit here and say I can predict the future. Instead, I have to sit in the unsettledness of it and just wait to see what happens.
And I can control what you can control, right? So I think that's a good answer. Like you focus on what you control and don't try to control things you can't. And, from reading your book, by the way, and I'm sure you realize this at this point, your son seems like a very strong person in general. Like you made a couple of examples of him, and I've heard you talk about it a couple of times, and he seems like he's very strong and independent. So you've done a good job there also. How is that dealing with the stresses of life and losing a job and stuff like that with children? Like, how did you handle that?
That's hard. I mean, he saw it all. I read a lot about the impact that has on kids, and divorce, loss of job, and death are the three hardest things for kids to deal with, right? And I'm divorced and I got fired. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this poor kid is like getting hit with all the hardest things at such a young age. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes he brings it up. He's like, Mom, I know that you like working for yourself, but in some ways it was a lot easier back then. And, gosh, when you got fired, that was so hard. And, so we talk about it. All I can do is be open and honest, right? I can't control that happened. And I have to just remind him, okay, let's focus on the things we can control. Now, when we work super hard on the new book, and if we get the new book to tip, guess what? We get to keep all the income from that. We don't turn it over to a company like I used to. It's our company. Right. So I'm always trying to bring him into the fold on, even though it's hard, success, if it was easy, everybody would have it. You've got to put these grind years in to make it work. And no, it's not easy on him every day, but he's learning that success isn't easy.
Yeah, it's great. I think that's great. I think it's good for him to see it, to be totally honest. Maybe he doesn't realize it yet all the time, but it's great for him to see long term. The other thing I wanted to ask you too is, because, I'm sure there's a lot of women out there. I mean, I speak to them probably regularly also that feel trapped. I had an employee I spoke to last week, and she was just like in a rut. Like, she didn't, she just wasn't enjoying her job anymore. And she had some health issues and a bunch of things were kind of pushing her back. And she just turned 40, and I could tell it was like a big deal for her, and almost like she felt trapped. And I just turned 43, and I feel like just as energized as I've always did, just in different ways. I'm using my energies in different ways, but I just feel like I don't feel like I'm even close to tapping into where I'm going to be, right? Like, I feel like there's so much more for me to grow and to go. How do you explain to women, because you really started over and you really started a new career and you're successf's now again. How do you speak to women about like, what's your strategy for that? Like, how do you get them out of that funk, right? Like, how do you get, like, you're not trapped. There's another life for you and you have to access it. Like, how do you explain to women how you access it and how they can access it? I guess is what I'm asking.
Here's what I would say, because first of all, I don't believe that, here's a pill, take this pill and it fixes everyone. That's not the case, right? So for an example, for me, my holdback for 14 years is I was working side by side with a villain. firing my villain was the number one way to set me up to take off. But that might not be this lady's problem, right? I don't know. Maybe she's her own villain. Maybe she's running a negative self-talk tape in her head saying what she can or cannot accomplish. So I truly believe that it's unique to everybody what they need to do. And I share this in my new book. It's a 3-step process to overcome any adversity. And I would say this to her. She needs to, number one, deconstruct her beliefs, take action, and look at the knowledge she's surrounding herself with. And to give a little more on that, the first thing I would say to her is, why are you stuck? And break that down into what is actually factually true versus a story that you're telling yourself. And I'd have her write that out, right? What is that story that, how do you say you're stuck? What does that even mean? Like, explain that. Tell me more, right? And let's deconstruct it down to the actual fact. If there is any, there's probably no fact. There's probably zero fact. It's probably that she's scared to leave, but she doesn't like the job. Something ambiguous that's not real, right? So deconstruct it down to fact. And then if she gets to it and says there is no fact, then decide on telling yourself a story that empowers you instead of holds you back, because you made this first story up. So make up another one that actually empowers you, right? So that'll be the first step. That's beliefs. Then I would go to action. What action step can you take right now to get you unstuck? And if it is that you don't like the job, send out one freaking resume. Make one phone call right now. Start the process. Tip one domino to set the rest in motion so you can start getting yourself and be empowered to get yourself out of your situation and build some momentum. And then lastly, what knowledge are you surrounding yourself with? Meaning, it can be social media people you follow, the people in your life. It can be podcasts you're listening to or books. But take a hard look at what information are you surrounding yourself with? And is it empowering you to get out of the situation, or is it helping to keep you stuck in that bad story? And if it is, start firing those people too, and start surrounding yourself with knowledge and people that support and advance you.
That's really, really good. That's really good advice. I like that. I like that. Do you feel like it's so clear to you now that you're outside of that world? Like outside of corporate, outside of all that, like, do you feel like when you're working next to your villain that it wasn't clear to you, like you didn't really know that person was a villain? Do you feel like that it's more clear?
No, I knew. I was just scared. I was super scared. I was so afraid of the unknown. I used to call it golden handcuffs. I have golden handcuffs. I make too much money. I have built this big successful team. But the truth was, I was scared of what is on the other side of unknown. And I'm not going to lie. I wake up some days with the coronavirus, my event's getting canceled and I get scared. I'm like, no, please, God, no. Like, I need it to go back to normal because we have to keep reinventing and stepping into more fear. And it does get exhausting, right? Like, there are days that I just put a post up today that, gosh, I'm having a tough weekend. It's only Tuesday. Come on, people. I need some good news.
How did you deal with the pandemic over the last year? So for me, it was good for my business, but I know for most people it wasn't, right? Because real estate was very hot and it was very, very good for everything I'm working on. But for you, I'm sure it wasn't, because a lot of stuff you're working on got canceled. So how do you deal with that? Like, how did you pivot? How did you deal with that?
It's not been great. Like, I put a whole chapter to this in the book that this has been really hard. These are the moments you wish you worked in corporate America, because you could kind of like peel back and the check comes in and not sweat it. Well, that wasn't where I'm living anymore. And so, there's good and bad with anything, right? So one thing that I know that I'm good at is I take action. And I know the place that I am my most creative and solve problems is if I'm working out. And for everyone listening, figure out when you're most creative. Maybe when you're taking a shower, playing with your kids, going for a walk, whatever, figure that out. Because when you need a solution, you want to say, I got to go work out right now. I need an answer. And so I jumped on my Peloton bike when the quarantine hit, and I kept asking myself, what problem can I solve from my home? Because I knew the speaking business was gone for a while, right? And so I said to myself on the bike, go look at your DMs and see what people ask you for, and then see if you can solve that problem. So I came to my computer and I started reading all the DMs, and people were always asking me, do you do consulting work? Do you ever work with sales teams? Do you do executive coaching for CEOs? And I ignored the messages because I was busy. So now I said, I'm going to put a post up and say, you asked, I answered. I'm launching my coaching and consulting business immediately. And I just figured it out along the way.
That's great. By the way, I did get, this is a weird coincidence, but I got an email like an hour before this conversation that you're speaking at VIP Mastermind. I think they just announced you. I don't know how you got the email, you're a keynote speaker at something that I got an email for randomly. So
I saw that today too. Yeah, that's an event that actually, hopefully it hasn't been canceled. Hopefully that's still in person, October 8th in Miami.
So that's a good question for you. So first of all, where's the best place to interact with you for people who hear this and they're like, I have to speak to this woman? Where would be the best place to interact?
Okay, the best place for sure is go to overcomeyourvillains.com and join my VIP book launch team. Every other week, I'm doing live Zoom meetings with my entire team. You get when you pre-order my book and join the team, you get my $299 confidence video course. You get my Overcome Your Villains workbook. You get the first chapter of the book. You get so much stuff that I'm sending to you. And then we get to meet together live every other Monday.
Oh, that's awesome. And then where are you speaking that you know of now? Like what's next? Like where the next, I know it's a hard question.
It's sad to say, but from now until October, everything that I had that was in person has moved to virtual, which stinks because then I can't, I don't even have rights to share it on social media or anything. So, I mean, listen, I'm still grateful for virtual events, but I'm definitely hoping that the ones for Q4 stay in person, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's a change. It's so crazy that it's so temperamental at this point now. I'm planning something for October, and I just said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to have it. This happened to me last year, and you'll appreciate this because, well, in 2019, when COVID first hit, I was planning this huge home buying like extravaganza seminar, and we were advertising everything on iHeart Radio. So I was going up to iHeart every single week. I was doing the commercials for it for like 3 months. We had this whole thing built up, and it was the week after they shut everything down here, and I had to go virtual. And I went from like 400 people to like 60 people. And I was just like, because before people had really adapted to virtual. So it was like a really, really new thing. So I'm a little bit gun shy right now to plan something because I'm afraid that that's what's going to be next. But anyway, you're awesome. And, I suggest that everybody picks up both of your books. I'm going to look forward to the audio book, and it's by ADD, not your writing, that I need to hear it in my ear. But, I thank you for coming on. And is there anything else that you want people to know about you, or to look out for your social media handles or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm at Heather Monahan on all social media. HeatherMonahan.com is my main website. And again, overcomeyourvillains.com is where you can sign up for my VIP book launch team, pre-order the book, and get all of the bonus bundle that I'm offering.
Well, you're awesome, and I love the book, and I love the story, and I'm using it in my daily interactions with my salespeople because I think your story really fits. So thank you for all of it.
Oh, thank you so much for your support, and thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Heather. What an amazing interview with Heather Monahan. She's someone you want to look out for. Check out for her new book coming soon. Check out for her TED Talks on YouTube. Go check out her website. Her Instagram is amazing. I really got a lot out of her story, just restarting at 40. It shows you that it's never too late, it's never too early, it's always the right time to just kind of get started on what's next. Stay tuned for our next episode. Check out the Disruptors Network podcast on Apple, Spotify, Anchor, and wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again.